I'm Supermoon Tarot, and in today's video, we're going to be looking at who you were in a past life. I highly recommend, before you enjoy this pick a card, going to check out my recent video on past lives. I went to a lot of details. I have personally crossed over 2,000 past lives for just myself. That does not include the past lives I've experienced as more memories. There wasn't anything still, needing to be crossed over, and that doesn't include the ones I've crossed over for other people. So I have a lot of experience with it, and it was just such a joy talking about the Akashic records. In that video, I talk about how the process is done, why it happens, how it still affects you now, what it all means. I go in, if you have a question, it most likely was answered in that video. But I do want to mention that if you do still have additional questions, please feel free to ask. I will be happy to answer them. Maybe I'll do like a roundup video of any unanswered questions from the previous spiritual talking videos. Anyway, so we're gonna have fun today and look at your past life. And the cool thing about this is part of it's just like fun. It's cool to hear about who you were previously, but oftentimes than not, these experiences pop up because they will help you understand what is continuously being reflected in this lifetime, something that needs to be worked out, and you can finally be like, oh yes, that does keep popping up. Or you can kind of better understand, yeah, I don't know why I react this way, or I feel this way, or I just feel extra excited this way. Oh, I didn't know that energy was still carrying over. And it doesn't always necessarily have to be a negative thing. So get excited. It's going to be really fun. We have 4 groups in front of us. Group number 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to give you a moment to pick the group that you resonate with most. Now that you have, you can go down to the description where you can go to your designated group with its marked timestamp. But let's look at group number 1. Group number 1. Let's find out who you were in a past life by looking at the cards. We have 8 of Swords upright, 5 of Cups upright, 8 of Cups upright, King of Pentacles upright, and 7 of Wands upright. Okay. Oh, interesting. My spirit guide's saying this is being read chronologically, and I'm already getting images. Interesting. Oh, and you know what's also interesting? It actually talks about how you left the physical plane. This is super important. Or interesting, actually, is more the word I want to say, because I don't know if you know this, but a lot of people, when they think about past lives, they kind of think that it might only be focused on how you leave the physical plane, but that is just not always the case. Sometimes it has nothing to do. Maybe it's like a childhood thing. It could be anything, essentially. So we're going to be covering the whole gamut, so to speak. Now, I'll be honest with you. What I'm picking up is not the happiest past life. But please stick around and listen, because it will really clarify some blockages going on in your life. And by understanding what you previously experienced, that can be enough to unblock it. So let's get, and also it's a huge sense of relief to be like, oh, I'm not just making this up. This isn't just something that I'm doing to myself, but it's something you're carrying on. And now you can heal in this lifetime. Woo, we love that. We love lack of blockages. We love healing here. So let's first start with the 8 of Swords upright. It appears, the way my spirit guide described it is, you were imprisoned. I'm getting 2 simultaneous images because this is a general reading. So for a large group of you, it is a cave scenario, which is so bizarre. It's a cave. And then for others, a much more larger group of people, it's like a house. I did double check and I was like, do you mean like in a cellar? And they're like, no. It would be a circumstance where someone else was preventing you from leaving this space. I gave you the 2 options we talked about. Unfortunately, due to the time period, it was publicly acceptable that people knew this was happening to you. And because, this could have been anything from a romantic partner to just someone, I'll be honest with you, it was somebody who was strongly male dominant that basically were like, no, you're not going anywhere. And because they said so, it was a different time period, and people just kind of turned the other way, and this happened. So you were not allowed to leave your residence. You were sort of under their control. Again, there were no, bars or chains or anything like that. It was just like they were very controlling, so to speak. And I mean like intensely. Like you did not leave the place that they kept you at regularly unless they said so, ever. No excuses. And so this is what caused the Five of Cups scenario going on. And obviously this is a card filled with sadness and grief and like who would feel the best about life in this circumstance. But here's the important thing I want to go over. So this image I'm getting in my head is, it's like the perspective you were forced to have, like the only perspective you were allowed to have, was not a great one. And this is something that is carrying over in your life now. Now, I want to be really clear about this. This is not a pessimistic thing. It's like, hey, the only view you're allowed to have of the outside world is this tiny cave opening, and you can't really see much, and it doesn't look that great. Or you're looking out the bedroom, the window of the house. You're not even allowed to see that much out of it. The curtains are drawn. The little snippets you get aren't that exciting. And so the world that you understand, which is not a lot from this past life, isn't that great. So that's all you can think of the world. The circumstance that you were previously in wasn't great, and what you were allowed to see outside of it wasn't that much and wasn't great either. That does not mean that there has been a pessimism that's carried over, but rather, do you feel that options or opportunities kind of just seem to be outside of your grasp? Do you see what I'm saying here? Do you feel like you're trapped in a situation, and we're talking metaphorically here, where you can't look outside of what you're in? You feel like it's not within your grasp. Again, we're talking about free will here. You can leave the house. Everything's good. But maybe you just feel like you're unable to because of an emotion. Or maybe you feel like every time you reach out and you try to leave your circumstance, you want to try cool new things. It's just boring where you're at and you want to improve as a person or whatever and experience more life. It just seems to keep missing you. Do you see what I'm saying, or see how that would have carried over and there's an explanation behind it going on? So it appears in the Eight of Cups, there actually was somebody else who was interested in you. This actually was a soulmate. This is again, I'm so sorry. This was not all past lives are happy. This just happens. It appears they did greatly love you. But because they understood the circumstance could not change, and the other person who was keeping you down was aware of them and was actively keeping you away successfully from them, they had to make the really hard decision to leave you and just kind of sort of find life without you. But I say this with a very heavy heart, not only because that's not fun to hear about, but more importantly, when they left, that is not something they wanted to do. They continue to think about you. There's a feeling of like they're still searching for you. There's this sense of like, I'm definitely getting an intense sense of like, I've betrayed you. And in fact, if you feel that in relationship to other people, do you feel easily betrayed? Do you feel defensive, like they could betray you? Is there's that easy concern about trust going on here? This is where that feeling pops up again because of the circumstance. Again, we understand why they made the decision they made, but that doesn't mean the person you once were wasn't completely devastated and felt they were left alone. And at least I consider this somewhat of an uplifting thing. The person that really cared about you and had to make the choice to leave that's haunted them. You were soulmates. It really devastated them. Over here, we have the King of Pentacles representing the person that entrapped you. Now, I asked specifically my spirit guide, why Pentacles? Is there something specific there? They were this other person, I'm curious, currently in their lifetime? For some, but not all. Okay. So sometimes previous circumstances, like maybe they were your husband or like a possessive just person in your life or brother or something. It could be anyone. But in this lifetime, they could be like a coworker. They could literally be your child. It could be anyone. You can keep running into them essentially. So for a very small portion of you, this person's repeating, but not everyone. I just wanted to double check. Anyways, back to the Pentacles. The Pentacles are important here for them because this person was super matter of fact. They liked things as is, very understandable, very comprehensible, and they could not understand something so intangible like the love between you and this other person. They just knew, this is the thing I want. This is and that's the thing. They viewed you as a thing. This is the thing I want. I don't want this other person to have my thing. And, just stay away. They weren't asking themselves and weren't in a position in that lifetime to slow down and be like, what do you mean? Like, they're not yours. You can't be possessive like that. Are you even in love, or do you just want to consume and own, that? So this is, again, if you feel that intense defensiveness when you come across either this specific person that you feel matches sort of this energy description when you've had certain conversations, or if you feel especially triggered when you hear this sort of like when you come in contact with this kind of person and you're like, whoa, I get overly angry about it. This is why. Who would not be deeply bothered by this continuing on? And last but not least, and this is a really cool way to go out, unfortunately, it's both. The way that you left this lifetime was you went out fighting. You put, you were done. You were tired of being afraid. You really pushed back. It didn't end in your freedom, unfortunately, but at least you left making a very declarative statement of I don't care. I'm not going to stay stagnant. Stay where you want me to stay. I'm not cool with this. I'm letting you know I'm pushing back. And don't be surprised if you feel like that energy is carried over. It's almost like you didn't get to finish the fight. Do you see what I'm saying here? And if you feel this sense of I can't let things go when I get in an argument. I have to have it end. Or sometimes I just feel like this energy rise up in me and just consumes me. I can't even slightly get angry and I get going, or if I get worked up. Maybe you have road rage. Understand this was a fight that didn't get finished, and so it's this sort of unresolved, you just want that sense of we're done, we finished, we came to a conclusion. But the conclusion was cut off midway as you were trying to basically make your statement to this other person, being nope, I'm not yours, I want my freedom, goodbye. So even though this was I hope this wasn't too difficult for you to hear. I hope it clarified some kind of things that you might have bypassed and said to yourself, yeah, that's just who I am. And you can go, that's who you were. You can now let go of that and feel a little easier. Realized people aren't pushing back. You're no longer in that chain of experience. Again, it's about relaxing, realizing that this happened, understanding it, and just by seeing it and being oh, that's why, that can often be enough just to, I know I go through a whole process of healing lives, but often that can be enough. So please let me know in the comments below, do you feel you've already come in contact with this soulmate again, or do you feel like they're just around the corner? Do you feel like you know who this King of Pentacles is? I would love to know how you're going to allow yourself to be a little more open and realize what was you were once being put through and being forced one perspective and one perception of the world. You're finally going to allow yourself to realize you can step outside that house. You do have freedom. You are basically saying to the world, hey, give me more. I want more opportunity. I want more. So also consider giving the video a like, a subscribe, hit that notification bell. I am wishing you the best. I will see you in the next one. And let's get ready for group number 2. Group number 2. Let's find out who you were in a past life by looking at the cards. We have 10 of Swords upright. Ooh, two tens. 10 of Cups upright. 8 of Wands upright. Ooh, we already got a theme. I'm already getting messages. Hold on a second. Oh, okay. Okay, so we're going to be... Hold on. Let me just get the rest of this information. Okay, so we're going to be skipping around a little bit in your past life. So the thing with past lives, especially when I'm experiencing them, when I'm crossing them over, again, you can watch that past life video, so this makes more sense. But it's really only important whatever was the pivotal moments in a person's life that then is something they need to look at, or it's like the most important thing they need to understand. And fun fact, the most important things they need to understand are not always at like important moments like a marriage. It could be the most minute detail that slightly bothered them, or a small insignificant thing they don't even think affects them. The point is, whatever's going to show up is going to show up, and it's never quite what you think it is. So we're going to get a little bit of a snapshot of important moments in your life. Now, the main overarching theme is the 8 of Wands in reverse here. But before we go over that, we need to look at what's going on over here, here, and here. We have 3 important moments popping up. So this is not probably the best to hear, but this is a different version of you at a different time. Unfortunately, you took somebody's, how do I put this? You took away somebody's physical form. You stopped them. They no longer existed. And here's where it gets more difficult. You made this decision because you felt that this person was standing in the way of what my spirit guide quote unquote describes as your happy ending. You were like, when I get this, when I have this, everything's going to be great, and this person's in the way. Unfortunately, this person was innocent. They were not like some terrible, mean person, trying to stop you. It seems like it was a really drastic snap decision that version of you felt they had to make. They kind of sort of pushed it out of their mind most of their life, sort of compartmentalizing a difficult decision they felt they needed to make. They didn't need to make it, I want to be clear, but it still happened, that old past life. But this person, and I want you to remember this idea, they felt they had to control the situation in order to get this happy ending. Now, this happy ending is a feeling of, it feels like there was someone else involved. It felt like you and somebody else were trying to get away. It does feel romantic, like the two of you were trying to run away together. It definitely feels like this sensation of like, you were going to get away, you were going to get, a plot of land for yourselves, you were going to start a whole new life. Very much that dream movie type of scenario and feeling. I'm just double checking with my spirit guide that I'm correct about this. Yeah, they're nodding their head. Okay, good. I just want to make sure I was hearing all the messages clearly and I was seeing all the images clearly. So that's one scenario and situation that happened kind of early on in the life. I would say probably like early 20s is kind of the vibe I'm getting here. But here's the thing. Then we have these 2 scenarios going on over here. So when you were still with this other person, again, this probably most likely was your significant other, you guys had a garden together. Now this garden wasn't, like you guys weren't farmers, but the garden was important. It would have been probably one of the main ways you would have gotten food of some sort. Maybe you needed I'm getting told main food. I'm getting the head nod to that. Okay, good. So main food resource. You get what I'm saying here? So the problem here though is the garden just didn't seem to want to grow. The main problem and reason why the garden didn't want to grow was because of how forceful your past life was trying to make it happen. It was a lot of like overwatering it, overstressing about it. And I want to be clear here. it wasn't the stressing, it was the over manhandling of the actual plants themselves. It wasn't about bad soil, it was a sort of energy being brought, a thought that it couldn't grow on its own, it needed to grow. You need this because it will complete the happy ending sort of vibe. Again, I don't want to use the term complete the happy ending because your thought wasn't like, oh, I'll run away with this other person and I'll have a garden and this. It's just like, you already on the mindset of like, I want it to be a certain way, I want it to feel this way, and this is part of the puzzle piece of this, so it's important it happens, but it wasn't your dream and destination to have the garden. Do you see what I'm saying here? It was but a piece. But again, it's this idea of forcing something when you didn't need to. I know it sounds really harsh. We're gonna talk about this. It's not as bad as it sounds. And then we have finally the Ace of Swords. Interestingly enough here for fellow tarot readers, not all tarot reading needs to be just straight up what the cards traditionally mean. Sometimes it is by images and intuitive reading. This is why it's so important to have various tarot decks, because it makes the process really interesting when you want to bounce between the traditional way tarot cards actually mean mixed with the imagery you're seeing, because there is a reason you picked that tarot deck and there is a reason you got that specific card. So in the Ace of Swords, I'm being told by my spirit guide, it appears you were no longer with this other person. I'm not getting clear details if this person, no longer existed, left you. It wasn't very clear what this situation was, but you needed to make a new decision romantically who you were going to be with later in life. And at this point in time in history, whoever you were with, I'm getting strong female energy that this was so important, because whoever you were with next, it was going to make or break the surrounding around you. So you probably were picking someone strategically based on their money, how it was going to set you up, did they have a house, that type of thing. Not out of greed or really wanting a really nice lifestyle. These are not necessarily bad things to want to have a nice life. That's not a bad thing. You're not a greedy person for that. It was just realistic at the time. It was like either you're with somebody who doesn't give you financial security, and if you don't have financial security at major, like I would say a vast majority of history, you could potentially, not survive on your own. So it was important to pick someone of certain status so you could survive and even thrive. So it seems you're trying to pick between two romantic options, but it didn't feel romantic to you at all. In fact, it was and this is why it's not an Ace of Cups scenario, it's an Ace of Swords scenario, is what my spirit guide told me. For you, it was like writing down a list of pros and cons. Again, not choosing things based on how they could work out in your favor, just naturally feeling it in the moment. Who do you have more chemistry with? Because it appears both of the options you were choosing between were both good contenders. It was just a major pros and cons list of like, who has the better assets and social standing, and where will this lead me in the end? And they're both good options, but it wasn't just like, okay, well, if they're both good options, who do you click with more kind of thing. There wasn't a lot of heart behind it. Most likely because this person was more your dream person, and later in life when you were surviving, it kind of became more of a clinical thing for you. That definitely is something you should consider. Like, does that how you feel in your current state of life? Do you feel like when push comes to shove and that romantic option that you want around you isn't around you, do you feel like you become a little more clinical when looking at love? That's definitely something to consider. But the overarching theme here is I want you to pay attention to in the Eight of Wands in reverse. The way my spirit guide puts this is, this lifetime had lots of opportunities. Tons of them coming your way fast. They were always flooding into you. It seems that you're very fortunate. This person was very fortunate, but they were too worried about, like, they weren't allowing the universe and it to just come into their lives and everything to work out in their favor. They needed to just sort of force and make sure it was absolutely correct. It's a sort of in your own head type of mentality, feeling like you need to be a part of the process when the process has already been set in motion. This comes from a place of not trusting the universe, not trusting everything's working out in your favor. And this is something to consider. Do you feel like that gets reflected now in this timeline? In this scenario, this was a very drastic decision the past version of you made. It didn't need to be done, but you felt it needed, not you, the past life version of you, felt it needed to be done in order to really cement that happy ending. When the garden popped up, it was imperative the garden had to exist, and it had to exist quickly, and there was no other way that it could possibly exist in a couple months when you better understood gardening. So it was, again, forcing something instead of giving it some space, letting it happen on its own, trusting that, of course, you guys picked a good place to grow vegetables and fruit and whatever you were going to grow, and let it work itself out on its own in between taking care of it and nurturing it, knowing when to step in, say, hey, garden, this is what I would like, plant some seeds, back away and go, thank you, nature, you do your thing, universe. And then same thing over here. It became such a sort of forced mentality that soon the sense of like following your heart, your feelings, letting that sense of like happiness be a major factor the way it was in the beginning of your life. Over here was a main important factor for you to have, because Ten of Cups was all about like complete emotional bliss. Over here was the most important thing for that past life version of you to be happy. And by the end of it, it was like, what's the best strategic decision? The forcing of everything kind of choked out the emotions and connection of it, and also sort of caused a lack of trust within yourself and how things are going to work out. But the interesting thing is the garden was starting to grow. It started to peter out when there was too much force and trying to make it happen within a certain amount of time. This is like the imagery I'm getting. This was going to happen anyways. You and this other person were going to run away and be together and have your plot of land, but you were still worried if there were any witnesses or someone was going to follow you, and you had to make absolutely sure. You have already people who were interested in making you their partner and giving you a good situation. You had multiple options, but it still wasn't good enough for you. What's the best possible option? There's a feeling of like, oh, but things didn't work out, when they were always going to work out, and there were lots of options always being thrown towards you. So this is definitely a time to be reflective and think, is there a time when I feel like I should step back and realize my life is way better than I'm, realizing it maybe is? And this isn't, no one's saying like a lack of gratitude. It's more like relaxing, taking a breath and being like, maybe I can, there's too many cooks in the kitchen, so to speak, but think of the kitchen as the wish and desire you want, and the other cooks being the universe and being like, we got you, you can relax, things are always working out for you, opportunities are coming your way, just let it work out. Did it not work out, or did you kind of force it too much out of lack of trust, so you basically told the universe, I don't trust this, and so that's kind of what you got back. Sorry if that sounded too harsh. There's no criticism going on here or judgment. But this is just to have some better clarity of why things maybe, there's some guilt maybe in your life. And again, this could be like weird, unexplainable guilt from something that a decision made long ago, and forgiving yourself and the version of yourself and realizing where that version of yourself came from. Understanding why things maybe don't work out and having an answer of how they can continue to work out in the long term, and realizing opportunities are coming more towards you than you realize, but you just kind of have to like be welcoming of it, open, back away, give it some space. So please let me know in the comments below, what do you feel what is the first thing you're going to do in order to kind of like catch yourself in the moment when you feel like, oh no, I'm about to get everything I want, I'm starting to self-sabotage. What's the first thing you're going to do to like calm yourself down, take a second and go, but I trust it's all going to work out, and I'm going to give it some space to work out. I'd love to know. Also, consider giving this video a like and a subscribe, and hit that notification bell. It helps out like you would not believe. I am wishing you the best. I will see you in the next one. And let's get ready for group number 3. Group number 3, let's find out who you were in a past life by looking at the cards. We've got King of Cups in reverse. Ooh, I'm already seeing a face in my head. 3 of Pentacles in reverse. Oops, sorry about that. 9 of Swords upright. Wheel of Fortune upright, and 4 of Swords in reverse. Give me a moment. I am seeing very clear images. Give me a second to process all of it and go over it with my spirit guides. Okay. Okay, this one's super interesting. It's, how do I say this? It's strangely positive. It's positive because this past version of you had such a great attitude, dealing with certain circumstances, and there's a lot of like interesting whimsy about this version of you in the past and stuff like that. A lot of likable traits. But there are some things we want to go over in order to get you out of some, I don't know if I'd call them blockages. Like, even my spirit guide's going like that might not be the exact word for it. There's some great perception here of the past version of you, but we want to go over all the details in order for you to kind of be free of some stuff. That's how I want to put it. So, first off, the Three of Pentacles in reverse. It's actually not really important that it's in reverse. Right? I'm just double checking with my spirit guides. Okay, then hold on. Let me put it upright just for visual sake because it's pretty. Okay, so the way this is being expressed to me with my spirit guides and the images I'm seeing, it appears you were someone who had a lot of suitors back in the day. You had a lot of people who were trying to get your attention. I'll be straight up. I'm picking a very strong female energy. Just many men, trying to go after you. You were just kind of like, that's nice. It was kind of cool, but it wasn't your utmost attention. You were quite adventurous and driven in what you were trying to achieve. You knew people liked you, but you weren't really kind of consumed by it or really bothered by it. You were just like, that's nice. You do you, boo. You can be interested in me, but I'm going to go accomplish the things I want to accomplish. The thing that's interesting here, though, is the bee analogy, because my spirit guide wanted me to relay information I one time was told when I actually met bee in the lower world. They said, now I do want to put this out there for anybody who's chatting it up with their spirit guides, animal and we'll just say human-y wise, when you speak to any spirit guide, they do not blanketly always have the same message and represent the same thing for everyone ever. Does that make sense? So B might say one thing to me and another thing to you. It's not always the same thing. I want to be clear about this so you can enjoy all the possible messages that you can potentially receive. Anyway, so B told me it's not when bees collect pollen in order to create honey, they are not looking for the individual sweet moments, those little amazing things they're absolutely sure, yep, there's honey, I'm grabbing more honey and I'm adding it to my honey. They act on instinct and they make decisions, and these decisions may not always feel very kind of conclusive or very intense or all-knowing. It's just kind of like, I don't know, I'm just going to make this decision. And yet they are on the right path, and it's all adding up to something really sweet and wonderful and nutrient-filled, something that's going to be extremely beneficial for them. So that's very much the attitude and vibe behind this past version of you. It was a lot of like not really thinking about things too deeply, just knowing to like do what you wanted to do when you wanted to do it, but you really were always working towards something really awesome and like a dream that like something very fulfilling. And it just all seemed to work out because as you were making decisions, you weren't really stressed about, oh, is this the right thing? I don't know if I don't feel really deeply, and just something to consider even in this current lifetime. It worked for you then. Maybe you can reconsider enjoying that concept now. Just something to consider again. Anyway, one of the potential people that wanted to gain your favor, your hand in marriage or partnership, whatever, they were rejected by you. Now, I want to be clear about something. They think that the two of you are soulmates, but you're not, and you for sure rejected them because they just weren't your person. It doesn't feel really intense, like they're harmless. It's just they're like, no, we're meant to be, and you're like, no, we're really not. Now, the reason why it's important you know about this other person, I was asking my spirit guide, is they have returned again in this lifetime, and they will repeat this cycle again. a vast majority of you have met them, but there is still a collection of you that will. It's like, the way my spirit guide described it is, it's inevitable you will come in contact with each other again. And this is important to understand so you don't feel guilty or get confused if you just don't feel the same way, or even get caught up in what they're trying to sell you, because for them, they're like, nope, we're soulmates. I'm really into it. I feel it. And you're like, I don't know. I like the idea of us being soulmates, but I don't know if I feel that. I want this to work. I mean, or you seem nice, but I don't know. Something's off here. Nothing's wrong with you. It's just somebody wants something to be a certain way. It didn't work out in this lifetime. They're trying to finish it in this one. They still, maybe, hopefully, in this lifetime, they finally accept your rejection again. Because I am not picking up the vibe you're into them at all again in this lifetime. But they will appear again as is it as a romantic partner again? I'm getting a yes. Okay. Now, while this version of you was very upbeat and driven and making a lot of great decisions without putting too much sort of pressure on themselves, and obviously had a lot of options, especially romantically, they had a sister who suffered from pretty severe, like, grief and anxiety, pretty bad, like it was I was being shown very similarly to this card. They just didn't really ever leave the house. It was pretty bad. And you basically loved them and you took care of them. You did not at all see them as a burden, not in the least. And they were not jealous of you or mad at you for being the way you were. You were close. You got that they were that way and you cared for them, and it was fine. There was no tension here. But here's where the interesting part comes in, and then this is when we have the Wheel of Fortune popping up and even the Four of Swords popping up in reverse. So and this is how my spirit guide puts it, things happen for a reason, and even people's existence can be for a reason. And sometimes it's not always the happiest thing, and we don't always want to hear the truth because it might be too hard to hear. But in this circumstance, you'll be fine hearing this potentially. Your spirit guide sort of harbored the shadow self, or I don't know if I would describe it as shadow self. Think of them as harboring the not so fun emotions that you could have potentially experienced. It's like you got all the more fun ones, they got all the more difficult ones to process. And it was normal for you to have to sort of give up some of your time period in order to be there for them. They didn't bring you down, but you weren't really able to chase after your dreams and do what you needed to do. You needed to sort of be caught up in it with them. You see what I'm saying? At time periods. And then at other time periods, they were doing well enough, or so to speak, you were able to then go back to your more happy, driven, people chasing after you sort of way of life and sort of being. And this is when the Wheel of Fortune comes out. It was this sort of, you had a good attitude, and that's what I meant by strangely positive. It was this cycle, this loop you were in. Oh, I get some time, I'm working towards my dreams, everything's great. Oh, I got to take care of my sister. Okay, I will take care of them, that's okay. And it continues on and on. I have a question. Are they with them in this lifetime? Okay, so apparently yes. It's you still get along great, and they are not holding the same grief that they were in this lifetime, or that lifetime, the past lifetime we're talking about. But it can be an explanation as to why sometimes there's an unexpecting of butting heads, or feeling like, why did they take something so personally, and sort of have a sense of maybe there's something like, oh, I have to carry all this emotional weight, and you're kind of like, I didn't ask that of you, what's happening? It's sort of something that kind of can cycle through randomly, but they do not have this intense energy about them all the time anymore, which is great. But anyways, going back to this. So with the Wheel of Fortune, we have this loop going on, and just sort of this acceptance of oh, yep, I have ups, I have downs, I have ups, I have downs. But here's the thing that's interesting. In concept, that is a beautiful attitude to have. But here's what's so interesting. I found this out when I was traveling in the spirit realm and stuff like that, and the Akashic records and such. Did you know loops are actual things that exist? They are not metaphors, and this is where it gets more interesting. It is not a cycle that is your personal cycle that you're living in. There is a loop for every possible scenario you can think of, and anybody can step in any specific loop. So the loops already exist. It's not a loop you've created, and it's not a loop like your own personal thing. It's like you've stepped into a loop. And what's so interesting about this is by simply meditating, seeing the loop as like sort of think of it as like those wheels that like hamsters like climb on, or even some of those cats, those like cat walking wheels or whatever. Think of yourself in that wheel and just simply see yourself stepping off of it, and that will be enough to remove you from the loop. So the loop this past version of you was in was always accepting, oh yes, of course I'm gonna have that down, I'm gonna have that up, of course I'm gonna have that down, that up. They weren't able to realize they could step out of it. And maybe this could have been the thing. I don't want to say this would have been the thing to break free of the sister, not because again she wasn't a burden to this past version of you, and I don't even want to say this would have cured her and made it all better, but just understanding that you can evolve past your current circumstances. It doesn't have to be a constant, oh, things seem like they're going well, now you're dealing with drama. Now things are going well, oh my goodness, you're having to clean up again. You are allowed to progress and not have that up and down feeling kind of every now and then. You're allowed to get out of the loop. There was sort of an acceptance of the loop because, again, when things are so personal, it's easy to make excuses for yourself. Well, this is just who she is. Of course I'm not going to, leave her. Of course I want to support her. But by only saying that these are the only options, you're sort of just like giving into the loop. Yep, this is just how it is. This is how it is. You're not allowing the universe to say, well, maybe there's another way. Maybe it can get better for both of you. Who says you both can't step out of the loop? Who says it can't get better as a whole? So that's something to consider here. Do you feel like you're trapped in a loop? And last but not least, the Four of Swords is super interesting here. So again, strangely positive. So normally the Four of Swords relates to somebody who desperately needs a break and needs to take a nap, take a load off, just needs to chill out for some time period and really needs some rest, especially mentally. This is why it heavily relates to the idea of taking a nap, falling asleep for a little while. But when it's in reverse, it's implying if you don't take that break, there will be consequences because you need that break so bad, the universe is going to make you take that break and try to help you take that break. But interestingly enough, this version of you sort of donned armor, metaphorically, and was able to push past their energy point time and time again, sort of protecting themselves from these repercussions. And while nothing sort of came to pass that was negative, so they were able to get away with overexerting themselves, which is great. It's not about the lesson being learned here that the past version of yourself should have dealt with consequences. It was more that they didn't realize, and consequences could have at least helped put them in a position to enjoy the value of it, but it's about the value of taking a break when you are overworked. When you take that break, your brain can think, new ideas come in, new epiphanies, new versions of you. If you just keep perpetually pushing yourself past points, you're just kind of saying to yourself, I will be this person and in this scenario forever until either something interrupts it or you just full on pass out. And by giving yourself space, it gives you inspiration, creativity, realizations. Is this the person you want to be? Is this the place you want to be at? So on and so forth. So again, it's not that this past version of you coming into this new one needs to then suffer from some sort of consequence. It's about realizing that it's just about acknowledging the value of taking a break and that things won't necessarily fall apart if you need to give it a second. So pretty interesting. A lot of little fun facts and snippets popping up. I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave your comments below. Who is this King of Cups in reverse you feel you have already met? Or maybe you feel inspired by the idea of, as you move forward down your path, you don't necessarily have to feel super connected to every decision you make, but you can be like, yeah, I can just trust that I'm working towards ultimately building the honey, even if I don't understand why I'm choosing the flowers that I pick to pull the pollen off of it. Oh my goodness. Also consider giving this video a like and subscribe. Hit that notification bell. I am wishing you the best. I will see you in the next one. And let's get ready for our final group. Group number 4. Group number 4. Let's find out who were you in a past life by looking at the cards. We have 7 of Cups in reverse. The Sun card in reverse. Judgment in reverse. Page of Cups in reverse, and Knight of Cups in reverse. Okay, give me a second to look at this. Oh no. Okay, this is definitely sort of like a chain of events of why certain emotional reactions were the way they were. Oh my goodness. Okay. I really hope this is not sort of leaking over into your current circumstance, but if it is, this is definitely something you need to give love and attention to, and at least understand where the old version of you, or I guess past version of you, not old, version of you was coming from, and let's get into it. So I'm definitely getting in the 7 of Cups in reverse. You worked in some sort of shop, because I'm seeing a lot of opportunities to work in different circumstances of the place. So like sometimes you were helping check people out of the store, and this feels like a while ago. Like cash registers weren't really a thing, or if they were like super old school cash registers, like not electronic, you know what I'm saying? But maybe you were doing that. Maybe you were doing sales and you were helping people do that. Maybe you were doing stocking. Maybe you had little small jobs and presentations you were setting up. It was a lot of opportunity to do something in the shop. You worked for someone else, but the point is you had a major part in every aspect of it, and you were definitely given a lot of like freedom to just kind of like work about the shop for each individual person as it may. Now, here's the thing. There was a lot of things that just did not work out in these small opportunities. So we're talking about concepts like you're working on something, you're putting something away, and then suddenly you drop a product. Maybe it was like a plate and the plate broke. And then maybe you were trying to order something for the store and you got the wrong shipment. There was a lot of like little mess ups, and not necessarily on your part. It doesn't feel like that. My spirit guide's like shaking their head. They're like saying no. They explained it was kind of like a universe thing. It wasn't necessarily you as a clumsy person. Not that being clumsy is a bad thing. I want to be clear about that. But that's basically what was going on here. And it's important that that really got to that version of you back in the day. It really like hurt your personal feelings and could really add up sometimes and make it feel like you didn't know what you were doing, or kind of chipping away at your self-confidence. Now, this unfortunately came out in the Sun card in reverse. You did not love the skin you were in. There was a lot of confidence issues with the way you physically looked, and it bothered you, and it was something you regularly lamented on and kind of criticized yourself for, which is unfortunate because the Sun card in reverse is all about saying, like, look within. Not about look within because the outside isn't good. I'm more referring to the idea of like, pull it back. What can you value about you as an individual before you can then sort of present to the world the optimism and create the world around you that you would really like to enjoy? Like if you want this little slice of paradise, how can you see yourself as one? You see what I'm saying here? And it's a very sweet, self-empowering card of self-reflection and realizing, you know, maybe you don't need to look the way everyone else does. Maybe there is something special there you're not giving enough credit for. Either way, it was something, again, it was a confidence issue thing. Now this sort of like, again, this is a very sad sort of past life situation, I want to be clear, but it gives an explanation as to why one thing led to the other. So already not feeling too great often at your job, it's interesting because you worked at this like shop for a really long time. So like clearly these were bigger deals that you were making in your head than the person who employed you. They didn't really like blame you. There wasn't, it feels like that you two were very close, like almost like a surrogate, like parent kind of feeling. So they didn't mind these little things. They didn't define you by it, but you did. And that sense of like feeling like, oh, nobody likes the way I look. Things aren't working out sometimes. Maybe you'd get in your head on certain days when it would really add up, these little incidences. This is what then led to the Judgment card in reverse. My spirit guide explicitly refers to it as feeling like you're not being watched over. This was a feeling of, this was super old school type of thinking, so it was a feeling of like angels not watching over you, maybe not spirit guides. It was a clear, like, I'm not talking about like the universe, I'm talking about clearly someone watching over you in an ethereal way. It just felt like a sense of abandonment, and I want to be absolutely clear here. Every single person has a spirit guide, has many spirit guides watching over them, both animal and human related, and lots of angels helping out in between. It is super common. It's everybody, period, no matter who they are. So you definitely did have someone, you just didn't feel that way, and maybe we're not in the right state of mind to be able to understand how to see the signs when they were reaching out, being able to how to connect, none of that stuff. So you kind of felt alone, and that sense of loneliness and not feeling good about yourself is what sort of resulted in the Page of, again, past life, not current self, Page of Cups in reverse and the Knight of Cups in reverse. These are both about the concept of this old version of you watching other people constantly get offers for being in relationships. And remember, this is like older school, so the goal, this is not current day beliefs, but the goal back then was like to get hitched up with somebody, be in a marriage. You get what I'm saying? So like that was kind of the goal. This was like beyond just purely romance. It's like romance and like a sense of like accomplishment. It was a different time back then. But the point is, this version of you never got offers, kind of sort of was watching it. It was this feeling of like everyone else but me. But again, they were unaware that other people were unable to see any special qualities in this old version of you. You weren't able to shine and be sort of your own main character in your own story because they didn't see it in themselves. They saw themselves as lonely, so they were lonely. They didn't see themselves as beautiful and didn't see themselves as worth being noticed, so they weren't noticed and weren't seen as the wonderful beauty that they really were. And all of this sort of stemmed from one thought process to another. So you understand not only the chain of events here, but all of this can simply be turned around by saying, let's say you're like, you know what, I don't know if I love the way I look, but I'll find a way that they'll love the way I look. You know what I mean? Like being like, you know what, who cares? I'm going to figure out how to absolutely love every single part of me. I don't need to look like someone else. I'm going to figure out why this is so special. And really falling in love with the person you are and being proud of that, inside and out. And then realizing, technically I'm not alone. You know, if I need that help, when little mistakes happen, maybe these mistakes are not me being, not being taken care of, but rather my spirit guides trying to give me signs to, maybe they were putting you in a position. Oh, my spirit guide's going, yes. Like sometimes it's not always your spirit guides, it can be the universe, but you can be given help by these little incidences that were happening. They weren't a big deal. They didn't really mess up your life, but they were trying to get you out of your head, get you from thinking too hard about the way you were viewing yourself, criticizing yourself, trying to like get you out of your head, and you were being watched over and helped and trying to see these messages. They were trying to point out like, see how you're reflecting on yourself. Because I want to be clear, spirit guides aren't like throwing this in your way. They were trying to bring your attention, like sort of like you subconsciously caused it. Does that make sense? Like you are the universe viewing itself, and spirit guides were trying to be like, look, let me help you read the message, let me help you understand and get out of your head, and this one thing led to the next. So this is very like self-empowerment. You're not alone. You can realize how you can see yourself and how others then can perceive you. You're much more in control of the way the world interacts with around you than you're aware of, and maybe things aren't as serious as they could have been. I mean, this other person that employed you couldn't have cared less that these things happened. They really weren't that big of a deal. They were only as big of a deal as you made them, your old version of you. So this is so, I hope this was uplifting. I know it seems down in a lot of ways, but for me, I consider it a very uplifting thing, realizing how much control you really had and how much more special you were, and others could have seen you if you just changed. This old version of you just changed, like took control and was like, you know what, I'm going to change the way I see things. The whole thing's very fascinating to me. I love it. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please consider leaving a comment, a like, a subscribe, hit that notification bell. I am wishing you the best. I will see you in the next one. Bye.